Hi friends. So let's look at healing the father wound through a soul level lens. What if the relationship with your father was part of a much larger soul agreement? I know that may be difficult to hear, but hear me out. I've always been fascinated by the afterlife. I love listening to stories of people who've had near-death experiences, and I love mediumship and exploring the bigger spiritual questions about why we're here. And one thought that always comes back to me, if you believe in soul contracts, then perhaps we make agreements with the people who will become our parents before we come into this life. Maybe we choose certain relationship dynamics because they're going to help us learn particular lessons that we've come here to learn. I have heard stories on podcasts from people who've had NDEs, and they're describing it almost like a planning session before their souls incarnate. They gather and it's like, okay, maybe in this life, I'll be the father, you be the daughter. And, the relationship's not going to be great. There's going to be some challenges. There may be some things that I don't know how to give you. There may be things that you have to discover on your own. And through that experience, you'll learn something about yourself, about your worth, about your voice, about authority, and who you truly are. If that perspective resonates with you, then perhaps there is some kind of agreement being made. Now, not because we want suffering, but because our souls are seeking growth, understanding, and a full human experience. Now, I want to be really clear. I'm not condoning abuse. I'm not minimizing pain. I'm not even suggesting that difficult experiences aren't difficult or that we asked for them. They absolutely are. And if you've experienced deep wounds and betrayal, neglect, or abuse, those experiences deserve to be acknowledged with compassion and care. We as humans do have free will and choice. So an agreement could have been made for one kind of dynamic, and because of choices and experiences, a different one became the reality. But what I'm offering is simply another lens through which to view our parents and our father in particular. A spiritual perspective that some people find helpful once they've begun their healing journey. I know the question comes up immediately, why would I ever choose this? And honestly, I don't know. Maybe some souls choose particular difficult lessons. Maybe certain experiences accelerate growth. Or maybe there are lessons carried from past lifetimes. Maybe there are things we can't fully understand while we're living them. I don't claim to have all the answers, but I do find the possibility interesting. And I also want to point out something else that's important, I think. You can have a loving father and still struggle with authority. You can have a supportive father and still struggle with self-worth or confidence or trust and feeling good enough. That's why I don't believe the father wound is only about our biological father. It's also about our relationship to the themes of authority and power and validation, self-trust and worthiness. It's about every authority figure who influenced us. And perhaps if you believe in past lives, some of it may even extend beyond this lifetime altogether. And this is where my perspective on the father wound expands even further. In mythology and storytelling, there's this concept of the threshold guardian, the person or sometimes the obstacle that stands at the doorway of your next level growth. They're the challenge you have to move through in order to become who you were meant to become. So if we truly came here with soul contracts and lessons we wanted to learn, then perhaps our father wasn't simply a parent, but perhaps he was just one of the primary teachers assigned to your journey. I think this concept of the threshold guardian, the person who stands at the doorway, the one who challenges us, frustrates us, tests us, and ultimately pushes us toward becoming who we came here to be, it can shift our perspective, which can, in my opinion, help begin healing some of the hurt or pain we experienced. So what if on a soul level, your father agreed to play that role? It's not saying everything he did was right or wrong, but because maybe his presence or his absence became part of your curriculum, your soul came here to experience. And perhaps even authority figures who appeared later in your life became another version of that lesson. The teacher who didn't understand you, the boss who made you doubt yourself, the mentor who disappointed you, the partner whose approval you kept seeking, any person or authority figure who triggered self-doubt, people-pleasing, fear, or just feelings of not being good enough. What if each one was just offering another opportunity to reclaim your authority, to trust yourself, to know your worth, to stop seeking permission to be who you already are? From that perspective, the father wound becomes much more than your father. It becomes a journey of remembering your power. For me, the value of this perspective isn't about assigning blame again or creating even a spiritual explanation for everything. The value is perspective, distance, a wider view, because once we've done some healing work, whether it's therapy, trauma work, grief work, spiritual work, or something that allows ourselves to feel what we've never felt, we can begin to step back and see the larger picture, the larger story. We can begin to recognize the role people played in our lives, the role our father played, the role every authority figure played, the role every challenging relationship played. Of course, again, not to excuse bad behavior, I'll keep repeating that, but to understand what those experiences revealed within us are offering our growth. Because ultimately, I believe the journey is about remembering who we are, remembering that we are worthy, remembering that we are lovable, remembering that we belong, remembering that we are enough. Many spirituals say that at our core, we are pure love. I love how Suzanne Giesemann says that life is love in full expression. And perhaps that's what we're all trying to remember. Of course, being human makes that difficult because we're living in a world of duality, challenge and growth, pain and healing, fear and love, and we wouldn't know one without the other. So many people who've had near-death experiences describe Earth as school, a place where souls come to learn. And if that's true, then perhaps we didn't choose the easiest curriculum. Maybe we chose the family or the culture, the circumstances, and yes, perhaps even the father. So I wonder, what agreement might you have made? What lesson might your relationship with your father have been inviting you into exploring for yourself? Just consider it, because your soul may have been seeking something deeper through the experience. Whether your father is still living, no longer here, present in your life, or completely absent, these questions can sometimes open new doorways in the healing process. I know they did for me. When I was working on my own father wound while my father was still alive, I spent years doing this work, reflecting, feeling, trying to accept, trying to understand. And over time, I began to recognize that he was playing a role in my story, a significant role and a difficult role at times. And honestly, he played it well. But there were still lessons that were mine to learn, patterns that were mine to outgrow, and ways I was still seeking approval, trying to prove myself, ways I was looking outside myself for validation. And if I'm being truthful, it took me a long time to really understand that. In some ways, it took my father's passing for me to fully embody certain lessons, to stop proving, to stop performing and living for everyone else's expectations, and to finally start living more authentically, to really know my worth rather than constantly seeking evidence of it. Years ago, I remember reading Jen Spiller's book on the lunar nodes. I have South Node in Leo and North Node in Aquarius. And one of the themes she discussed was letting go of the need for approval. That one landed. When I look at that alongside my Saturn in Taurus, it made so much sense. I've seen these themes show up again and again throughout my life, especially in relationships. And honestly, I think most of our growth happens through relationships. You can do all the healing work in the world, therapy, astrology, past life regression, trauma work, books or courses. You can learn all the things, but eventually life asks you to practice what you've learned. in relationship with another human being. That's where embodiment happens. That's where we learn and discover whether we've truly integrated the lesson. And that takes some time. I don't think any of us arrive fully formed. Life unfolds through cycles, and astrology reflects that beautifully. We have Saturn returns, Saturn oppositions, Chiron transits, and the Chiron return around 50. Those are powerful developmental milestones. We all have the same milestones, but we experience them differently. And speaking as someone who has moved through many of those cycles now, I can tell you one thing. Growth doesn't happen all at once. It unfolds layer by layer, and there is no deadline. There is no destination. Just because you aren't who you hoped you'd be at a certain age doesn't mean you can't make tremendous progress. You can start your growth and healing journey at any time, at any age. And at the same time, we all have free will. We can continue repeating old stories, or we can become curious about them. We can choose to stay identified with the wound, or we can choose to explore what exists beyond it. For me, doing that work changed my life. It changed my relationships. It opened the door to meeting the man I would eventually marry. It shaped the way I became a mother, and it helped me create the secure family environment I had always longed for. Today, I believe that was the part of the soul contract between my father and me. And that's a bittersweet realization, because if that's true, then perhaps this is exactly why we incarnated as father and daughter. Perhaps this is why I chose him. And honestly, I wouldn't change my life now, because every experience shaped who I've become. And I like who I am, and I love my life. This Father's Day season, I find myself wanting to honor my father because he loved me in the ways he knew how, and because he played a profound role in my journey. I've also been fortunate to have experiences through evidential mediumship after his passing that brought healing and confirmation for me personally. Messages that acknowledged love and regret, growth, and understanding. They say we do a life review when we return to the other side, and it appears he has. And one of the experiences reinforced something for me. Even when a parent never does their own healing work, you still can heal. The relationship itself may never fully heal, but you can. You can heal whether they're present or absent, living or past, willing or unwilling to participate, because ultimately your healing belongs to you. So I just wanted to share this perspective today as just an idea, a possibility, because it's been a spiritual lens that has helped me make sense of my own journey. That perhaps we chose our fathers, and perhaps in some mysterious way, we also choose the lessons connected to them. What do you think? I know this perspective may be difficult for some people to hear. And again, I'm not saying anyone chose to be harmed or abused. What I am saying is that after healing, there can come a point where those experiences no longer hold the same charge over your life. And that's the freedom I wish for all of us. Because remember, the father wound isn't just about the father. It's about the journey, your journey towards self-trust, self-worth, and reclaiming your own inner authority. So this Father's Day season, I offer gratitude for the lessons, for the growth, for the healing, and for all of our fathers, wherever they may be on their own journey. Take care, friends. Thanks for listening, and keep nurturing your astrology.